Winter hit San Francisco harder than usual that year. The fog didn't just roll in, it claimed the Sunset District, settling like a wet, heavy shroud that dampened both sound and spirit. I was in my study, nursing a bourbon and trying to ignore the wind rattling the window panes, when the doorbell rang. It was late past 9. I pulled open the door to find my neighbor, Mr. Samuel. Sam Shaw, shivering on the porch. Sam was a retired actuary, a man of cold logic and crisp button-downs. But tonight, he looked unraveled. Wrapped in a heavy wool coat with a scarf choked tight around his neck, he was trembling violently, though the California chill wasn't nearly deep enough to cause it. "Come in, Sam. You look like you've seen a ghost," I said, forcing a chuckle as I ushered him into the warmth. Sam froze. He looked at me, eyes wide and hollow. "You have no idea," he whispered. I sat him down and poured him a drink. He downed it in a single swallow, the glass clattering against his teeth. "I have to tell someone," Sam began, his voice jagged. "I'm being followed, relentlessly." The story he spilled was the last thing I expected from a man like him. 30 years ago, back in Chicago, Sam hadn't been this quiet retiree. He'd been young, reckless, and in love. He had a friend, Arthur Miller, an intense, possessive schoolteacher. They fell out over a woman named Sarah. Sarah chose Sam, and they skipped town, leaving Arthur broken and seething with rage. We moved everywhere to outrun him. Sam stared into his empty glass. Denver, Seattle, LA. Finally here. Sarah's been gone for years, but I could always feel Arthur's hate. It never faded. A month ago, Sam had walked into a diner in the Mission for coffee, and there, in a corner booth, sat Arthur. He looked like a ruin of a man homeless, ragged, wild gray hair, but his eyes burned with manic recognition. "He started trailing me," Sam said. "Everywhere, never saying a word, just 20 paces back, stalking me." Then came the rain. 2 weeks ago, during a torrential downpour on Market Street, Sam saw Arthur waiting at a crosswalk. Panic took over. Sam bolted across the street the second the light changed. "I made it." Sam shuddered, gripping the armrest. "Arthur didn't. He tried to chase me. He didn't see the delivery truck." Sam buried his face in his hands. "It was messy. The truck dragged him. They said his right arm was severed at the elbow. Died instantly. I thought it was over," he whispered. "I thought I was finally free." A few days later, seeking peace, Sam drove up to Twin Peaks to watch the sunset. It's a lonely, windy spot. As he sat on a bench overlooking the Golden Gate, a sudden, unnatural chill pierced him. He felt a presence on the bench beside him. I turned my head. Sam's voice dropped to a whimper. It was Arthur, staring right at me, and his right arm, it ended in a bloody stump. Since that night, the thing that was Arthur followed him. Not always visible, but always there, shuffling 20 paces behind in the fog, the sound of dragging feet scratching against the pavement. "I can't shake him," Sam pleaded, grabbing my wrist. "He's out there right now, waiting." Suddenly, the lights in my living room flickered and died. The air grew heavy, smelling faintly of wet asphalt and copper blood. Ding dong. The doorbell rang. Not impatiently, just once. A long, deliberate press. Sam shrank back into the sofa, paralyzed. "Don't open it," he gasped. I grabbed a flashlight and moved to the door, my heart hammering against my ribs. I threw the bolt and swung the door wide. The street was empty. The fog swirled beneath the streetlights like living smoke. But there, standing right at the threshold, was a shape. A man in torn, muddy rags, matted hair. He looked up at me with dead, white eyes. And his right sleeve. It was empty, flapping loosely in the wind. I blinked, shining the beam directly at him. In the split second the light cut through the gloom, the figure vanished. Nothing remained but the swirling mist. I walked Sam home that night, flashlight in hand. He was shaking so hard he could barely put one foot in front of the other. The next morning, sirens woke me. Paramedics were wheeling Sam out on a stretcher. Massive heart attack, they said. But later, the neighbors whispered the real story. Sam had packed a bag, planning to drive to a monastery in Arizona for an exorcism. He never made it past his hallway. They found him near the front door, his face twisted in a silent scream, staring at a corner of the room that was empty to everyone else. I'd been chasing the silence for years. It was an itch I couldn't scratch in the city, a longing to just drift, inspired by too many nights reading Mark Twain and digging through my grandfather's old river journals. I wanted the kind of quiet you only find when the fog rolls in and the rest of the world ceases to exist. So, I finally did it. No cruise ships, no yachts. I rented an old, weathered houseboat deep in the Atchafalaya Basin of Louisiana. Locals call it swamp country. A tangled maze of cypress knees, Spanish moss, and black water that looks like strong coffee. I kept the crew small. Just a pilot named Bo and a quiet deckhand named Elias. No rush, I told them. Let's just drift. One evening, the heat turned oppressive. The humidity was so thick it felt like a wet blanket draped over my shoulders. We decided to anchor near a remote bank. Bo and Elias asked for the night off to check out a Zydeco festival in a nearby town. The faint thump of bass was echoing across the water. I waved them off. I wanted the solitude. As the hum of their skiff faded into the dark, a heavy silence settled in. The only sounds were the rhythmic chirping of crickets and the occasional heavy splash of a gator sliding into the muck. I sat on the deck, nursing a cigar, watching the mist curl up from the bayou. That's when she appeared. A small wooden skiff bumped softly against the hull. I hadn't heard a splash, nor the dip of an oar. Standing in it was a woman who didn't belong here. Not in this century, anyway. She wore a high-collared lace dress, something from the 1800s. Yet it was pristine, startlingly white against the muddy backdrop of the swamp. "Need a hand, miss?" I called out, my voice sounding too loud in the quiet. She didn't speak. She just looked at me with eyes that were bottomless pools of sadness. She climbed aboard with a supernatural grace, moving as if gravity didn't apply to her. She drifted past me, heading straight for the wheelhouse. "Hey, you can't go in there," I stammered, following her. But she stood by the wheel, staring out into the impenetrable darkness of the cypress forest. Slowly, she raised a pale finger, pointing toward a dense patch of trees where the shadows seemed deeper. "Is that where you need to go?" I asked, a chill running down my spine despite the heat. She turned to me. For a fleeting second, the smell of the swamp vanished, replaced by the scent of old parchment and blooming jasmine. She nodded once. I don't know what came over me, but I felt compelled to lift the anchor. It was a two-man job on a good day, but that night, the chains felt light as feathers. The current seized us immediately, pulling the boat exactly where she had pointed. We floated in silence for what felt like hours. She stood by the rail, scanning the water as if searching for a lost memory. Then, as we drifted into a clearing where the moonlight turned the water to silver, she turned to me. She offered a faint, tragic smile, and then simply stepped off the edge. "No!" I shouted, lunging for the rail. But there was no splash. No ripples broke the glassy surface. She was just gone. I stood there, paralyzed, my heart hammering against my ribs, until the sound of an outboard motor broke the spell. Bo and Elias climbed aboard, eyes wide, confused to find the boat miles downstream. "Boss, how on earth did you get all the way out here?" Bo asked, wiping sweat from his brow. "This is Dead Man's Drop." "A woman," I managed to say, my voice trembling. "A woman came aboard. She fell in right here." The color drained from Bo's face. He exchanged a dark look with Elias. "A woman in a lace dress? Smelled like jasmine?" Bo asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Yes, exactly. We have to find her." Bo took off his cap and sighed, shaking his head slowly. "Ain't no use looking, boss. You ain't the first to see her." "What do you mean?" Bo pointed a trembling finger at the dark, empty water. 50 years ago, the old LeBlanc plantation stood right where we're floating. A hurricane changed the river's course overnight. It swallowed the house, the land, and the family whole. They say the youngest daughter, Miss Clara, was set to be married that week. She still comes up sometimes, looking for her home, trying to guide boats back to a porch that ain't there anymore. I looked back at the water. The moonlight shimmered on the surface, peaceful, beautiful, and empty. "She pulled the anchor," I whispered, more to myself than to them. I couldn't have done it alone. Bo didn't say another word. He just steered the boat around, heading back toward the lights of civilization. I left the next morning. I was done with the silence. I went back to the city, to the noise and the chaos. But sometimes, on a humid night, when I catch the faint scent of jasmine on the breeze, I still shiver. The iron gates of number 16, Oak Street, didn't just open, they groaned, protesting the intrusion. Fog curled around Stephen's ankles as he stepped onto the property. Ahead, the Victorian mansion stood like a rotting tooth in the draw of Ravenswood, dark save for a sickly yellow glow spilling from a downstairs window. Across the street, old Mr. Henderson nursed his iced tea on the porch. He squinted. Another one for the Sterlings? That's twice today. Odd for folks who've been dead to the world since '95. Stephen straightened his tie. No pleasantries tonight. He was here for the Jade Serpent, a fortune Arthur Sterling kept rotting in a study. Easy target, 2 geriatrics and a maid. In and out. He pressed the bell. Silence stretched, then the door drifted open. A woman stood there, Martha, the housekeeper. Tall, stiff, and pale as bone. "He is expecting you," she said. Her voice was flat, dead air. Stephen stepped inside. The hallway smelled of funeral lilies and cold dust. Martha glided ahead, leading him to the study where Arthur Sterling sat, swallowed by a leather armchair, sunglasses hiding his eyes in the gloom. Ah, Stephen. Or is it the man from the agency? Arthur's voice was like dry leaves skittering on pavement. "Stephen is fine," he lied, flashing a practiced charming smile. "Just here to finalize that insurance policy." "Policy, yes." Arthur chuckled, a dry hacking sound. "Sit." Martha appeared with coffee. As she handed Stephen the cup, her fingers grazed his skin. He recoiled. It wasn't just cold, it was the chill of a morgue slab. She didn't blink, didn't apologize. She just retreated into the shadows. "Lovely place," Stephen said, his eyes darting to the heavy steel safe behind the desk. "Jackpot." "It's quiet," Arthur murmured, "especially since our boy Victor went away." Victor. The name hit Stephen like a punch to the gut. The memory flashed Bangkok, 5 years ago. A botched job. A hero kid named Victor. The heavy wrench in Stephen's hand. The crunch. "I didn't know you had a son," Stephen stammered, his charm cracking. "Oh, he's gone. But he talks to us, tells us everything." Arthur leaned forward. The sunglasses slipped. Behind them, nothing. Just endless, oozing hollows. Stephen's heart hammered against his ribs. "Cut the act, old man!" He snapped his switchblade open, the click violent in the silence. "Open the safe, now!" Arthur didn't flinch. Impatient, just like the man who murdered my son. "I said open it!" Stephen roared, standing up. "You think you're the hunter?" Arthur's voice dropped, booming from the walls now. "You came for a robbery, Stephen. You walked into a sentencing." Snap. The lights died. "Martha," Arthur whispered in the dark. "Take out the trash." Stephen spun around, legs heavy, paralyzed by pure primal terror. From the corner, Martha emerged. In the moonlight, her face wasn't just pale, it was decaying, skin sloughing off bone. She moved with a sliding, broken gait. "Victor says hello," she hissed. Stephen opened his mouth to scream, but the sound died in his throat. Arthur stood up, black fluid weeping from his empty sockets. "You used a wrench," Arthur said, a heavy blow to the back of the head. "Only fair we return the favor." Martha lunged. She grabbed Stephen 200 pounds of muscle and lifted him one-handed like a rag doll. Her grip was iron and ice. "Please," Stephen wheezed, feet dangling. I didn't know it was him." "Ignorance isn't an alibi for murder," Arthur said coldly. "Number 16 has been waiting for you." With a sickening crunch, Martha didn't just throw him. She launched him through the room. Stephen slammed against the far wall, bone shattering on impact. As darkness swallowed his vision, the last thing he saw was the safe door creaking open on its own. Inside, there was no jade serpent. Just a rusted, blood-stained wrench sitting on a velvet cushion. Outside, the fog swallowed the street. Mr. Henderson finished his tea, shivering as the mansion went completely dark. "Quiet, folks," he muttered, heading inside. Dead quiet. He didn't see the broken shape being dragged into the basement by the pale woman. He didn't hear the final stifled gurgle. Number 16. Oak Street stood silent again. The debt was paid.